In the dream, you forgot you were divine. You entered this world through your mother's womb, the first temple, the original threshold. You didn't crash into life. You were guided in, slowly, deliberately, like breath into lungs. You were spirit clothed in innocence, cradled in amniotic truth. But the moment you arrived, the noise began. Machines blinked, charts were marked, and the spell of separation was cast. Your umbilical cord was cut too early, severing you from the last sacred transmission of ancestral wisdom and encoded memory. No one reminded you that you were sacred. So you began a slow descent into forgetting, trading your light for language, your knowing for names. In the dream, you forgot you were divine and accepted the rituals of their so-called medicine. They lined up the needles like priests offering sacraments, but what they gave you didn't heal, it disconnected. With every injection, a frequency was lowered, a memory sealed, a code silenced within your bloodstream. You were told it was safety, but it was sedation. They called it science, but it was sorcery. You were never diseased, you were divine, but they needed you to forget that. So they muted your sacred signals under the guise of modern care. In this dream, you forgot you were divine, and you ate what they gave you, never questioning why it didn't feel like nourishment. You swallowed lab-grown meat, pesticide-kissed grains, and sugar-laced drinks that numbed your cells. They called it nutrition, but it was necromancy. You fed the body, but the soul starved. You forgot the colors of chlorophyll. You forgot the medicine in the bitter roots. Your hunger was real, but it wasn't for food. It was for truth, for minerals, for the forgotten intelligence of plants that once whispered with the voice of the sun. In the dream, you forgot you were divine, and you sat obediently in buildings that once echoed with ceremony, now reduced to classrooms of compliance. They taught you the alphabet of enslavement, the history of the conqueror, the math of mammon, but not once did they remind you of the pyramids your ancestors aligned to the stars. Not once did they speak of the temples buried beneath your cities. Not once did they ask you how your spirit feels. You were given grades instead of guidance, reports instead of rituals, diplomas instead of destiny. And in this dream, you forgot you were divine and sought solace in the shadows. You reached for bottles that blurred your brilliance. You laid with lovers who mirrored your longing but couldn't reflect your light. You took pills to mute the roar of your own awakening, not because you were broken, but because you were grieving the parts of yourself you buried alive. You weren't chasing destruction, you were seeking union, but the world taught you that numbness is normal, that sedation is safer than sovereignty. And so you drifted, not knowing the sacred was still watching. But when that spark found its flame, and something ancient stirred, not in your mind, but in your marrow, it didn't explode, it returned. Like a memory too patient to force itself upon you. Like a breeze that had always been there, waiting for you to stop running. You began to see differently, not just with eyes, but with knowing. You started asking questions the world didn't have answers for. You began to feel what couldn't be Googled. And for the first time, you saw through the simulation. The codes began to break. The illusion began to thin. And beneath it all, you were sovereign, unbothered, and luminous. And when that spark found its flame, you began the long walk home to yourself, not with judgment, but with grace. You met your own eyes in silence and forgave the version of you that survived the dark. You didn't shame your past, you embraced it, because it led you here. You embraced compassion not as weakness, but as sacred power. You let love back in, not as romance, but as a revolution. The kind that starts with whispering, "I forgive you," to the mirror and meaning it. And when that spark found its flame and your skin longed to touch the earth again, you walked barefoot on sacred ground, not because it was trendy, but because it was true. The dirt welcomed you like a long-lost child. Your feet remembered the frequency of home. The static in your spirit began to dissolve. You weren't just grounding, you were reconnecting with the great heartbeat beneath all things. Nature became your therapist, your temple, your truest teacher. Because when that spark found its flame and your eyes turned upward, not towards screens, but towards the source, you remembered the wisdom of the sun, as light encoded with remembrance. You stared gently at the golden disk in the early hours, and it whispered things no human could tell you. Downloads came without words. The sky was no longer just background, it became a library, and your gaze became prayer. Because when that spark found its flame, you rose, as a reflection of the all. You look into the eyes of strangers and recognize an ancient echo. You walk with presence, no longer searching but remembering. You feel connected not through belief, but through vibration. The earth responds to your footsteps. The sun honors your gaze. You remember that your thoughts shape worlds, that your choices ripple through timelines. And in this remembering, you become dangerous to the lie, holy to the truth. And as you listen to these words, your memory reactivates. You are me, and I am you. And you were never asleep. You were simply waiting to be called. And if these words reached you, it's because part of you has already returned. I'm not here to lead you. I'm only holding up the mirror, so you remember how radiant you already are. May love guide your path, and may the Most High walk with you every breath. I see you, I honor you, because I am you. In Lakesh.